Hello and welcome to Catamount Community Connection. Yes, sir, folks, it's time for another weekly show that we air each and every Sunday. And I'm Brian Collamore, your host. We speak with community leaders from the business, professional, nonprofit, and political arenas. And the goal of the program is to make listeners aware of things that are going on in Rutland County and throughout the state. We just had July 1st, a bunch of new regulations and statutes go into effect. We've tried to keep you posted with those. If anyone ever has questions, they can certainly email me at my legislative address, and I'll do my best to get an answer for you. Our show is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has already brought you the 179th Vermont State Fair at Rutland. So we are technically, even though the fair ended last night, we're already looking forward to the 180th fair coming up. Coincidentally, it'll be 180 years old, and the country will be 250 years old. But the Vermont State Fair began in Rutland in 1846, so it was before the Civil War even. And we don't have the final figures in, obviously, since it just ended last night. But from all indications, and I spoke with Robert Congdon, the fair president, and I was down to the fair probably about 4 times during the week. And there were great crowds for the most part. There were a couple of days in the middle when it got pretty toasty, and people probably availed themselves of an opportunity to stay a little cooler. But anyway, we're hoping that the final numbers come in and that they're great and that the fair is again in the black big time and being able to continue. So the 180th fair will be next August, 2026, believe it or not. It's time for our kind of our weekly, monthly, I don't know, every now and then it gets to be 6 or 7 weeks.
We try to do it consistently.
Yeah, but we haven't had the Rutland City Mayor on for a while. So we'll welcome Mike Doenges in for the show. And I know there's a whole bunch of things coming in. We did speak with both Eddie Bove, who is the planning coordinator, and the there's another title that he has, and it's escaping me.
Zoning, yeah.
Zoning administrator for the city. And Dave Allaire was in the president of the Board of Aldermen that day. So we talked to those two folks about the TIF district. And then we did another show with Lyle Jepson. And I know Mayor Doenges and I have talked a lot about it, too. So I know that's coming up. And, you know, it's still August, but summer is quickly, although you wouldn't know it from last week, but summer is quickly fading away. But this fall, there will be the beginnings of movement in the pit. Yeah. The dirt will begin to be dug up and transported out of the area, and eventually a big cement pad will be filled or will be poured, and that will be beginnings of the new hotel. That actual construction in terms of tearing apart Center Street and putting new infrastructure in won't happen until next spring.
Next spring, right.
But it's something to look forward to. So anyway, welcome in, Michael, and let us know what's going on.
Yeah, I think let's talk about the TIF for a few minutes and what we're doing. So the hotel, right now, they're actually pulling apart the old newsroom. They're deconstructing it. They found some asbestos in there. Even though it was built in the 80s, right? Like there's still some asbestos products. So they're pulling that apart. And then they're going to start, like you said, they're going to start digging up the pit, pulling out the dirty dirt, as they call it, and trucking that out of here. And that's actually pretty expensive. And that is not even part of the hotel project. That's a separate process in preparation for what's to come next. So now when we talk about the hotel and we talk about the TIF, they really are they are connected to each other, but they are two different things. The TIF district is an area that we've designated that as improvements are made in the community, we will get the increment towards the city. So if, let's say a property is worth, let's say the taxes on a property are $10,000. And then after the new hotel's in place, those taxes are $1 million now. The difference between that 10,000 and that million, that's what the city gets. And that's how we can do these projects without impacting the other property taxpayers. So the projects themselves pay for what we need to do in the city. So it's really important to separate out the two different things, right? The first thing is the hotel project, the Beldens, they're doing that. We're actually not putting money into that project per se. We're doing all of the work around it, the utility work, the power work, the water work, and then the roadway. That's where the TIF dollars come into play, and that's the benefit that is being paid for through that hotel. So it's interesting. We're focused now at the city on what do we have to do to get the project done. So the project for us is we have to have new water lines on Center Street in Wales. We have to have new wastewater and stormwater on Center Street to support the hotel, but we're also going to be installing this so it supports other buildings and businesses on those streets. So they're getting an upgrade. Right now, there's only a 4-inch water line on Center Street. And if you think about, water being used for flushing toilets and all that, that's fine. But if you think about water being used to put out a fire in these buildings, it's not. So upgrading that water line, moving the sewer line out from underneath the buildings, all kind of technically boring stuff, but really necessary to continue to spur development in the area. And then there's the streetscape piece. So we know we shut down Center Street 4 or 5 times a year, sometimes more, for different events. Whether it's Friday Night Live, the Whoopie Pie Festival, Halloween stuff, whatever it happens to be, we have different events down there. And Center Street has been the focus of attention to make it a more pedestrian space since I think the first study was done in 1973. This is something we've been talking about for years. So with the upgrades that are happening at the Paramount, which if you haven't seen, I would encourage you to go talk to Eric over there and get a tour of where they're at right now. They're doing a phenomenal job. The hotel going in, the city's project is to get, like I said, those plumbing and the boring stuff done underground, but above ground to redo that streetscape and make it welcoming and kind of fitting with what's going on. And this isn't something new. Like I said, this is something that's been going on for a while, and we're just finally able to find a path to execute on it.
Yeah, 1973, when we go back in history, and I was here, I was working at another radio station, actually, which isn't even on the air anymore, WHWB. Yep. And I was there the night that the Berwick Hotel burned and did a report on the phone back to the station. And boy, it was cold that night. But so it's been since 73, so 50 years, 50 whatever years it's been. And we wound up with this pit that has just been there for since then.
Right.
And we got really close a couple of times to some development, and it kind of fell apart at the last minute. This looks like it's really going to happen.
It does look like it's really going to happen. But this is where the TIF comes in for both parties, right? So the hotel can't get built without the new plumbing, and we can't get the new plumbing without the hotel. So this is what the bond vote is all about. So on October 7th, there'll be a special vote. And normally when we vote for bonds, it's either coming out of the water fund or the general fund. This is coming from the TIF fund. So as people go and vote for this bond, we want them to recognize that this isn't coming out of their property taxes at all. This is dollars that are generated in the district, and that will allow us to make that investment. But we need their permission to borrow that money because it's a long-term thing. There's laws in the state of Vermont that say if you're going out to borrow, the voters need to approve it. So that's what the purpose of this bond vote is. And if that passes, which we really hope that it does, I think we'll see that development start, like you said, in the spring, and that would be absolutely incredible for the city as a whole. Not just for downtown, Brian. This is going to be a positive thing for the city as a whole.
And again, despite the fact that it will have a county-wide impact, a positive impact, it'll just be the city voters that get to say yay or nay.
Right.
So we'll have another, because it seems like we've been talking a lot about this on this show, but we're just trying to make people aware of the way that a tax increment financing system works, that it's not necessarily going to immediately impact people's property taxes. There is a connection between that and the education fund.
That's right.
And so you do need to sort of get the whole picture, but eventually, if things develop the way we hope, and that the whole district downtown is increased in value, thereby generating more tax dollars, that's what the difference between what that value is today and what it will be is what that increment means. And that's so anyway, October 7th, and we did have will have a letter coming out from the entire Rutland County legislative delegation in support of a positive vote. We have to be careful because we can't necessarily tell people how to vote, but I think the way I phrased it was we're encouraging people to consider voting yes.
There you go. That's a good way
on the bond. And so we'll see what happens on October 7th.
Yeah, there are a lot of rules around what you can and can't say and how to say it. But, I think you made a great point. The education fund doesn't get all the tax dollars it normally would. But remember, if that stays a pit, they won't get a dime more either, right? So even during the TIF process, even during that collection period of 20 years, there will be new dollars going to the education fund because we don't collect 100% for the TIF. I think it's 85% or something.
It is.
So everybody wins, and it's very rare in government when you can find a place where everybody agrees and everybody wins. But it's interesting, no matter what side of the fence you're on, everybody's rooting for this to happen, which is great.
Yeah, that point was made very well by the president of the Board of Aldermen, Dave Allaire, who said that, let's say there's 20 different questions and votes that come up before the city council. Most of the time it's not unanimous just because of the way people, lie politically. But in this case, it was a unanimous vote. All of them voted yes to proceed with this. So, again, we'll have to wait and see. I know there'll be, and we did talk about this with both of those folks, some interruptions as the street is dug up and, there'll be fewer parking spots. I mean, that's how you have to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think a decision's been made yet whether to take everything from what would be Merchants Row all the way to Wales.
Right.
Or whether there'll be little sections.
Yeah, so it's the way we are having discussions, and this is what we're doing different than, say, Winooski or Burlington, right? And not to say that they're doing it wrong, but we're doing it differently, right? We're having discussions with those business owners, with the property owners, with the residents that live in that area and saying, look, we know this is going to impact you. You know you want to get to the end result. We want to get there as quickly as possible, but you want your business to stay open during this time. What's the fastest way to do this with the least amount of dust and dirt that can keep you connected to your people? So we're trying to be very strategic about it, even to the point where it's like, hey, look, there are certain ways where we could close the road down for a week and do a bunch of stuff and open it back up, or do we do half and half so that you're open the whole time? And that's still to be determined. We got a long way between now and then, but those are the discussions because we want really that feedback from those business owners. I think another piece that's really interesting is, it is going to be dusty and dirty, and we've got a team that's already talking about like how are we going to clean windows and how are we going to keep things looking good. So very conscious effort to make sure that this is as smooth as we can possibly make it as we're doing these projects downtown.
Yeah, we had, as I'm now remembering, just that one section of this talk about with Ed Bove and Dave Allaire, but I also had Lyle Jepson in and the head of the executive director of the Downtown Rutland Partnership, whose name is escaping.
Hal Ascente.
Ascente.
Yep.
And both of them did a really good job explaining again. I think Lyle's phrase was celebrate the dirt.
Celebrate the dirt.
Something like that. So that, there'll be kind of incentives built in, not this fall, but next spring as the actual reconstruction of the infrastructure takes place to get people to come downtown and to celebrate what's going to be there.
And, we should be celebrating now, too, just the fact that this is working so well. So Rutland really deserves a project like this. We see a lot of money, grants and things go to other communities, and we've really focused on developing this. It's complex to do this, but complex is just this simplicity stacked on each other, right? So we've put a lot of work in because this project is going to require multiple funding sources. And one of those funding sources is something called the Northern Borders Regional Commission. And we got a grant for $3 million. Yep. Rutland hasn't seen grants like that in a while outside of ARPA. And the fact that we were able to obtain that grant is a vote of confidence. And the governor voted, helped us with that, which is great. And, he's on the commission and we appreciate his support. But that's a vote of confidence from multiple states. That's a vote of confidence from the federal side. That's a vote of confidence that we're going to move forward for that. So between the TIF and the Northern Borders, we have most of the project covered. We have 2 or 3 others out there. And then we just heard that we may be able to find some funds somewhere else. So it's a lot of effort to go in, but it's a good reflection of all of these different components working together. And we should be excited about that right now because that tells us that people are excited and outside of Rutland are excited and willing to support the projects that we're doing. We're
talking to Rutland City Mayor Mike Doenges here on Catamount Community Connection. What else is going on downtown? I've got some calendar notes, but I'll open it up to you. I mean, we're, again, the middle of August now. Mm-hmm. school, hate to say it, kids, but school is not that far away, maybe a week or two in some cases. Yeah. I know they've already begun football practice because I did speak with the Rutland High School athletic director and football coach, Mike Norman. And, those kids, holy cow, last week they were out and it's like 90 degrees and they've got, I don't know what it is, 30 pounds, 35 pounds of equipment on, running around. So hats off to them. But anyway, anything else coming up? I know I've got the whoopie pie thing to talk a little bit about.
We'll talk about that. I think, we've got a lot going on. It's interesting because City Hall, a lot of this stuff is day to day. People received their tax bills recently, and what they would have seen is the education rate for, if you're a resident, your education rate went down, and your tax bill should have reflected that. If you're a non-resident or you own a business, that actually went up. So we've been getting a lot of phone calls around that. We are starting the reappraisal. So I think it's worth spending a minute talking about that. The reappraisal process has begun. Letters are going out. People are receiving this in the mail. This is ordered by the state of Vermont. And actually, the legislature, I believe, has asked that we start doing this every 6 years. Yep. And part of the reason for that is the last time we did this was 2006. So the property values in 2006 are wholly different than the property values in 2026, which is 2027 is probably when we'll finish this. So that process has begun. And, I talked to my city assessor. Her name is Katie, and she does a great job. And what we're asking people to do right now is to work with the appraisal company and work through the process. They want to just set up appointments to come in and take a look. And people are like, well, I don't want to let them in my house. You can do that. Right? You could certainly, but if you do, they're going to have to guess. And sometimes their guesses are not great. So you really want to kind of work through the process. Now, a lot of the concerns that we get are my taxes are going to go up because my appraisal went up. And I think taking the time to explain this is important. So in 2000, we base a lot of things on the $150,000 household, right? All of the tax calculations, when we give examples, it's like for a $150,000 household, here's what your tax bill is going to be. When we look at something that's $150,000 20 years ago, that house in the past 20 years could have had improvements or may not have. So the value of that will definitely go up because $150,000 20 years ago is different than today. So let's say it goes up. Well, your neighbor's house and all the other houses are going to fluctuate as well. So what a reappraisal isn't going to do isn't going to jack your taxes up because your value went up. What it's going to do is it's going to evaluate how your house is appraisal-wise versus the other houses. And then we calculate how much you owe in taxes based on something called the grand list. So we take all of the value together into one number, and then there's some calculations based on that, and then we divide it up based on that calculation. So if let's say everybody's value goes up 20%, just a round number. That means that your tax bill won't go up 20%. It means that everybody's tax bill will stay the same because everybody went up 27%. If you have any questions about it, I do encourage that you call City Hall. You ask for the assessor's office. She's more than willing to have the conversation about how the process works. But this can be a challenging time, especially when we're reading articles about what's going on in Bombazine right now, because a lot of their values went up 60% with their reappraisal. But I've even talked to people in Bombazine who said, my taxes actually went down because my neighbor's values went up. So there'll be a bit of a balancing act in there. But what we hope to see is that everybody kind of comes out okay on the other side.
And in a perfect world, and we're not in a perfect world.
No, we are not.
And I liken it to sort of the tide coming in and all the boats in the harbor went up at the same time and with very little differences between that. Things should smooth out. It isn't to say that everybody's going to see a tax that's the same or even a little less. Some may be a lot different. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it isn't. But it's something that is only, and COVID really messed everything up.
It really did.
You said 06 was the last reappraisal in the city. It used to be if you fell below 85% or above 115% of the assessed normal value, then you had issues. And everybody, because people were just coming up here left and right, sight unseen, here's the cash, I want to buy that house, I don't care what it is. And so everybody, the home values just or home prices. I don't know if they're valued.
That's right.
But the home prices went up just exorbitantly, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. So I guess I would just say to people that are legitimately concerned, you may find out that you're not that negatively impacted. Some of them probably will, but I don't know how else to put it. But I liken it to that kind of like the tides coming in and all the boats went up at some point.
That's right. And I think that's a great analogy. Like a rising tide floats all boats, and everybody's floating at the same time. And we'll get through it, and there'll be an opportunity for people to say, hey, I disagree with this particular, maybe that says they have tile floors when they have hardwood. They'll be able to go through that conversation and get things corrected. And it'll take some time. Our goal is to actually have it done by 2028. That's how long this is going to take. Yeah. There's a likelihood it could be done sooner, but that's the target. So, and we're lucky that we got this started when we did, because it's a complex process. Yeah,
and there aren't that many assessors, and so there's almost like a waiting list for some communities to get involved with this, and the longer you wait, it's probably not a good thing.
Exactly right.
Okay, we're talking to the Rutland City Mayor, Mike Doenges, and we'll take our first break here on Catamount Community Connection, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore, and each and every Sunday, I'm the host of what we call Catamount Community Connection, and it's an ongoing public affairs program here on all of the 5 Catamount stations. I just wanted to look a little bit ahead. This coming Friday, August 22nd, and I'll give credit for both the Legion and the VFW. I'll include them both here. I don't want to play favorites. VFW Post 648, Burger Night on this coming Friday. And also Queen of Hearts drawing, which is open to the public. So the second and fourth Fridays at the VFW are the Burger Nights. I think they have Wing Night
on the first and
third.
Oh, and I'll tell you, they're both awesome. And they got that new kitchen, so I'm excited to go tonight. Yeah.
This coming Friday also, if you graduated from Rutland High School in 1995, you may not believe it, but this is your 30th reunion. I know, time goes by.
I was 98, so I got a couple of years.
It kicks off this coming Friday at Hop and Moose, and then Saturday there's a high school tour and some golf and games at Stonehenge, the indoor golf, and also some libations, let's just say, Friday night as well. This coming Saturday, so a couple of days from now, Downtown Rutland Street Party and Sidewalk Sales. Center Street and Merchants Row will be the place to head from 9 to 5. And this is something that used to go for 2 days, as I remember when I was first here. It would do a Friday and then a Saturday. And this is just going to be on Saturday. But it's one of those things where a lot of the merchants find bargains. And I'm talking 50, 60, 70% off normal prices. So put that on your calendar for this coming Saturday. Also this coming Saturday is Chittenden Day. And the PTO sponsors some fun runs, barbecues. There's a vendor booth, or a lot of vendor booths, actually. And there's activities all day long. That's from noon to 4 at Barstow Memorial School. And we would invite you in for that. So that is the coming week. And then the week after, we have a couple other things, including the American Legion Bingo, which is on Thursday, August 28th. And again, I think that's I don't know if it's a weekly or monthly thing, but the doors open at 4:30 anyway if you want to go to the Legion and play bingo. And we will talk about the Whoopie Pie Festival. That's next month on the 13th of September.
Man, September's coming fast, huh?
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah. So I know we have a new person taking over at the Rutland Redevelopment Authority. And we also wanted to talk about housing a little bit. We have spent a lot of time in the legislature trying to figure the best way to rehab houses that are already built through that VIP program, Vermont Improvement, and also, if need be, to construct or reconstruct new homes. Right. And I think we're on the way in a couple of areas.
Things are, I'll tell you, we've been putting a lot of effort in over the last 2-3 years. I mean, before I was mayor, you guys were working on a legislature. I really kind of ramped some things up along with the housing task force in the past few years, and we're starting to see the results of it. And that's what I love. So you talked about VHIP.
Yep.
Where VHIP originally, the first version of it was, for low income and affordable. This new version the governor has out there now is actually a mixed. There's a low income and affordable segment, and then there's a market rate segment, which is awesome. So that's one program. Another program that we did several years ago is the rental rehab revolving loan fund. That's at the city, and you can get that through Cornerstone, and that's a $30,000 loan per unit. So if you have like a 4-unit building, you can get up to $90,000 or towards rehabbing some of those offline units, and that's at 1.5% interest, which back then was kind of like, oh, it's a good deal. Now it's like, that's a great deal. Right. So that's available. We have some people applying for that right now. We have the Roofs Over Rutland program, which is another low interest loan. And we've made a lot of changes at the city level to allow for better permitting, less expensive permitting. So we used to have this change of use permit, which is essentially our wastewater allocation fee. And it was a relatively cost prohibitive permit if you were doing housing. So what we said is, hey, we're going to cut the cost. If you're converting to housing or redoing some housing, we'll cut the cost of that to incentivize housing. And it's worked out really well. And then I think the last piece of what we've been doing is working with the state, and they passed this bill this year, the Senate version, thank goodness, because we really like that version, which allows for outside of the TIF district, essentially the tax increment to be collected so that we can use that around. So if we have to upgrade plumbing or upgrade wastewater or do things like fix the sidewalks, we're going to have that ability. So you take all these, probably let's call them 15 different things that have happened to motivate housing development and growth, and you want to measure how has that worked, right? Well, one good example is 24 Wales Street, which is where Table 24 used to be. Yep. A woman by the name of Claire Purcell purchased the upstairs floors and converted them into apartments. I believe, if I count correctly, I believe there's 4 or 5. There might be 5 units total. And they were slightly higher end units, 1 and 2 bedrooms. And she got them listed online. She's doing the final finishing, and they're all rented out, Brian. That shows me 2 things. 1, the programs work because she leveraged some of the programs I listed. And 2, the demand still exists. And that's what the question is there a demand for this housing? So let's just say hypothetically that all 5 of those tenants, and I do know that at least 2 of them are from Rutland, wanted to move out of their 4-bedroom house to downtown, right? Well, now I have, let's say all 5, just for hypothetical, did. Now I have 5 4-bedroom houses back on the market in the city, right? This is what exactly we want to see. We want to see this movement in the housing around here so that families can move in and rent that house. My family is a perfect example. I grew up in a house. There were 6 of us in that house, my 2 parents and my 3 siblings and myself, right? My 3 siblings and myself all moved out, and my 2 parents still live in that same house. And so when we talk about Rutland's population decline in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, a lot of that was due to matriculation, just people moving to other areas. But some of it, and especially today, and especially when we look at this demand, is due to the fact that no new available housing existed, right? There was no place for people to move to, so they moved outside of the city or whatever happened to be. And we also look at how does that tie back to the city budget. Before, we had 20,000 people living in the city paying for that budget. Now we have, less. We have 16,000, right? So as we focus on this housing growth that brings new units online, you talked about floating all boats earlier. That's exactly what's going to help reduce the tax burden because it's going to get spread out more, right? So this is like one big pie and we're all taking thinner slices. And that's exactly what you want, right? You want to take a thinner slice of the tax pie for yourself, right? So this is really good. It's a perfect result. We've seen other 2 and 3 units come online. We see people continuing to purchase, duplexes and then turn them into triplexes or quadplexes. We saw, I just heard about another one down the road the other day. And we're seeing these permits be applied for at a pretty consistent basis. So we know the market exists. We know the market exists across the full spectrum. But I did have a conversation about HUD housing and affordable housing and how that system on the federal level is starting to change. So as we look at that, and I talked to Angus, and I don't know if you've ever had Angus in from Homeless Prevention, right? Angus is looking at how do we use this midterm rental piece to keep housing people in the affordable space. So we're looking into that to make sure that that's happening. But I think as we continue to develop market rate and above market rate housing, and Cornerstone continues to develop their affordable housing, you'll start to see more of that come online. And that's what we're really excited about. So, there are several other examples, but I think just looking at what we've seen in the past, call it 6 months about units coming online, we're really happy with the results.
We were over at Fairhaven probably a month ago now, maybe 6 weeks, the old racetrack. And you mentioned one of the laws that was enacted this year by the legislature included, I call them project-based TIFs or mini TIFs, if you will. And that is a perfect example of what a community like Fairhaven would be able to do in terms of putting water, sewer, power into a spot. I think some of that already has, if I'm remembering right. I don't know, because there was a racetrack there, so they had to have something. And so, it's not as big as Rutland's. Rutland's isn't as big as Killington's, but it's going to work particularly well for those areas outside of that sort of Tier 1 designation that will be able to get funding with a tax increment financing provision in that. So that's good news for sure.
One of the things that we're going to be looking to talk to the legislature about in this coming year is landlord-tenant laws. Vermont's a really tough nut to crack, so to speak, but in order to get more people who are willing to go back to renting out their duplex or, take those units and bring them online that aren't just institutional investors, the mom and pops, that's what made Rutland what it was, right? It's like you had a house and you had a second floor apartment that you rented out. And I think a lot of the landlord training has gone away. I think a lot of the legislation has changed over the years to make it a little bit harder to be a landlord and deal with problems. So we'll be pushing on what's the best way to deal with that. And so that's some of the stuff that we need to do on the grander scale. But as those things happen, as that TIF comes into play, as people start building additional dwelling units on their properties or whatever happens, I think you'll see we start to alleviate a little bit of the stress, and that's exactly what we want those programs to do. And by the way, it was really neat to have the governor come down to Fairhaven and sign that bill in a place that can use that improvement. And it's really appreciated that this part of Vermont, which maybe didn't get a lot of attention over the previous 20 years, is starting to be looked at as Treasurer Pichak says, so as goes Rutland County, so goes the state. And I think that's a real good reflection. If we invest here, the rest of the state will grow.
And I can tell you from personal experience, the landlord-tenant situation is unbalanced to a great degree, favoring the tenants at the moment.
Right.
And I would not want to be a landlord right now with the current situation. If you, even with the most assurances that you get in the world, maybe even a family member who say, I'm going to pay your rent, don't you worry, I'm going to... And the minute they don't, it becomes almost impossible to... I don't know how else to say it, get rid of the tenant because they're not paying rent. And at the end, if there's animosity built up, before you know it, somebody's trashing a place, and it just... So I think, I will definitely be interested in putting something in that would balance the scale out a little bit more.
And I think balance is the right word. Right? Because, yes, there have certainly been landlords in the past that have abused the laws and to kick tenants out that they didn't like. And you want to protect people to have their homes, but there is, in order for people to be willing to rent out their property, they need to have assurances that they're going to be protected. And I think that's where the gap has been created, is there's this lack of protection for the landlord now that the tenants have in droves. So, and as a landlord, luckily we're good about tenant selection and we're good about, our tenants have been great. But it's hard when you're, when your tenants start breaking things because they're not happy with you. So
you mentioned 24 Wales. The VFW, which is across the street, also has, I think, 2 units. I'm not sure the second one's been completed yet, but I know one of them has, and it's more of a B&B right now.
Right.
But they're looking for traveling nurses or sort of that professional level people that you pretty well they're guaranteed they're going to at least be able to pay the rent.
Right.
And so
there are advantages. And in Rutland, we don't have a glut of Airbnbs. So there's not, people say, well, if all the Airbnbs went away, we'd have more places. Yes, absolutely. But it's only about 40 to 45. There's not that many. Yeah. So I think we have a good balance there. But you can see why they choose to go that direction, because the laws do favor them in those cases. So.
Okay, we got a new RRA director. Haven't met the gentleman yet.
Yeah, so Sean Atkins, he was the former, so he just left St. Albans Town as their city manager. He has a huge economic development base. He's been here, a week and a half, and he's already started to work on some plans. He's going to help manage the TIF. He's working with Barbara, who's been at the RRA for 30 years, and they're going to be doing a lot of this great business outreach. His ideas are fantastic, and I hope you can have him on at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. So have him get a hold of me, and we'll set something up for sure.
Absolutely. One of the things that we're focused on with the RRA, with Cedar, and a couple other people, is this group that we put together, and it's and I didn't name it, somebody else did, but it's the Mayor's Task Force on the Downtown Plaza. And what it is includes a couple of aldermen and just people from the community. With the migration of Walmart to a super Walmart in Rutland Town, we're going to be left with this space. Now, the property, I'll caveat all of this conversation with, the property is privately owned by Brixmor, which owns the plaza. But we didn't want to just leave it up to fate as to what could potentially be next. So we started having discussions around what could this look like in Rutland. One of the things I hear from constituents all the time is we need more retail. I'll tell you though, that might be tough. The retail, not just Rutland, but retail as a whole, and I don't know if you've seen this in the state, I don't know if you've seen legislation coming that affects this, but retail as a whole has changed in the past 20 years. With the advent of Amazon, with Walmart online shipping, a lot of people spend their money online and have things delivered. Right?
Yeah.
You used to have UPS and FedEx only did. Now you got UPS, FedEx, Amazon delivers. They get the Postal Service. Everybody's getting deliveries, and that's how most people consume stuff now.
Yeah.
So what we're finding is that we go forward in this. Yes, we want retail, but we need to look at things like artisanal stuff. Like McNeil & Reed is a perfect example. You're not going to be able to buy a great suit online. You want to be able to go in, try it on, get measured for it. That's the type of stuff that we're going to see probably more of in communities like Rutland. So as we think about what's going to go in that space and what we're targeting, is it going to be residential? Is it going to be an outdoor space? How do we expand the farmers market? We're starting to have those discussions now. We've got some artist renderings and drawings. So, stay tuned in the future, but we aren't just letting that Walmart go away without having the conversation about what is going to be a real positive thing for Rutland in that space. It's inside the TIF district. It's right down the road from the hotel. It's right next to the Paramount. And we'd love to get feedback on that as we move forward.
Is there anybody from Brixmor on that task force?
So Brixmor is kind of hard to get a hold of. And I'm not dogging them. They have... Brixmor has a couple hundred properties, and our property is kind of low on the list. But this is where the RRA director is coming in. He's going to reach out to Brixmor and try to build a better relationship there. And we've tried, but they're very busy, and they don't really get involved in the community development pieces. So we'd be happy to have them on the task force, and we'd be happy to have that conversation with them. Again, not giving them a hard time, just saying more along the lines of it hasn't really been part of the process as up to yet.
Yeah, and I don't know whether in the end... Because at one time, it was the train station that was in that space. If I'm remembering my history well, Peter Markowski, who was a farmer at the time, had this urge to do something else all of a sudden. I think he bought one bulldozer, and he was hired to literally level all the buildings that were there. And that's how the Rutland Shopping Plaza came to be. Of course, his family is now... huge in the area, but if I'm remembering correctly, that's how it started. And so at some point, I don't know whether the railroad owned that and then they sold it to Brixmor. Yeah. Is that how things worked out?
I think they sold it to someone else before. Brixmor eventually acquired it over time through all the different purchases. But yes, it was developed when it was developed the first time as a plaza, it was a different ownership at that point. So one of the things that's so interesting in this conversation is how the plaza, in the rail yard originally, how it kind of divided one side of town from another. Mm-hmm. And how the plaza still, because essentially the back of the plaza is a big giant wall, still kind of does that today. So in this thought process, we're like, how do we connect that neighborhood back into downtown, even though the rail line's still through there? And there are certainly interesting ways in the design, but when we're thinking about it, this is why I brought up the retail thing. It's not just about what can we get back in there for retail. It's how do we develop this as part of the neighborhood and make this, because having an empty storefront or having a half empty storefront or having another, not that Ocean State job lot isn't great, but the other half of that building is empty, and it has been since Hannaford moved out. We don't want to have another one of those situations. We want to have a situation where once Walmart vacates in about 2 years or so, we have at least some ideas of what could be next, and we're prepared for it.
So speaking of the Rutland Shopping Plaza, this will only take a couple of minutes probably. You and I were involved in a meeting with the bus,
Yes.
Marble Valley Transit Authority, and the first floor of what is the parking deck. And at one point, they had moved to what is the Amtrak station, and they have since moved back underneath and hopefully have begun a little more cooperative relationship with BGS, which is the Buildings and Ground Services for the state of Vermont.
Yes.
Which technically that's who it is that they're looking for. Your idea of getting all that sort of contract stuff into one contract, I thought was really well done. I don't know that it's happened yet, but at least there's some appetite for that. And hopefully we'll find a solution for that.
So that's such a great point. The garage, it depends on who you talk to. Some people are like, I don't feel safe. Or the garage has 2 levels to it. It has 5 levels to it. But there's 2 different things, right? There's the Marble Valley Regional Transit, which is on the first floor, and then all the parking above. And no matter who is looking at it or why they are, people view it as either a liability or I don't use it, or maybe some view it as an asset. We want everybody to view this as an asset because it is. It's an awesome thing to have such a facility in downtown Rutland. The ability for people to park and go shopping, the ability for us to transit through our city right in one location. It's relatively unique. Burlington's parking garage is one situation, and their transit's another, and to them, that's challenging. For us, we don't want it to be a challenge. We want this to be a great thing, especially while we're working on Center Street. We want to celebrate this. So we have a mission now. Turn this parking deck into an asset. What the state has done to get the bus back in there in such short order shows that the state is willing to do the work, which is awesome. What you're talking about is consolidating the contract. There's so much ambiguity between all these contracts. If we can do that, great. But we want people to look at that deck and say, I want to use it. I feel safe. It's enjoyable. It's pleasant. So that's everything from making sure we clean and paint the stairwells, making sure we have better lighting, better security cameras, security on site. When Center Street businesses need access to park, while Center Street's under construction, that's where they're going to have to go. So we're working on it. We're going to make it an asset. We're going to make it an enjoyable place for people to be and make it feel super safe and actually safe as well. Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, no, more to come on that for sure, but especially with the new hotel, which will also serve as a parking destination for some of the people there. Yeah. We need to make sure that everything's in place. It's clean, it's safe, and
good for Rutland.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take another break. We're talking to the Rutland City Mayor, Mike Doenges, here on Catamount Community Connection. And we'll take a break, and we're coming right back. Hey, folks, welcome back to Catamount Community Connection, our show brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the 179th Vermont State Fair at Rutland. Just over last night, as a matter of fact, and hopefully those of you that attended the Oliver Anthony concert were happy with that. And we haven't got final numbers in on the fair this year. We'll have Robert Congdon back in probably in 2 or 3 weeks to give us the numbers. But I was there for at least 3 days of it, and it was very well attended. I didn't have any inclination that there was any problems anywhere along the way. So I think everybody got a pretty good time, and we'll have maybe record-breaking numbers when all the data comes in. But congratulations to the Rutland County Agricultural Society. And yes, we're already looking forward. Here's one day after the fair. We're already looking forward to next year and the 180th Vermont State Fair at Rutland. And thanks to them for sponsoring the show here each and every week. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about housing. We talked about the TIF district again. Just remind you, it's a ways away. It's October 7th. That'll be the vote. It'll be city residents only that get a chance to say yes or no on that bond. And get more information, please. Don't sort of like not understand, what's going to happen with that, because I think it is important for people to have all of the facts. But we'll be giving you more information as we get closer for sure. The next event I want to talk about downtown is the Whoopie Pie Festival. We now hold the record, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Maine had it for a while, but we broke the record of the largest whoopie pie in the United States. And so I don't want to say we've dialed it back a little bit, but we're not going to try to set a new record. It's going to be coming up on the 13th of September, which is a Saturday, and it's only going to be from noon to 4 this year. I think last year it was a little bit longer, but they will close Center Street off and put the turf down and all of that stuff, and there'll be plenty of whoopie pie to eat and celebrate, and it's a great family event. And Cedar has done a great job with that.
They do a great job, and it draws people to the community. And I think for us, that's it's held in downtown Rutland. Cedar is a regional organization, but in their mission is to draw as many people to the region as possible for things like that. And I think that it's fantastic. People come from all around. I was talking to my city clerk, and there is a baker. One of the bakers is coming from Rhode Island to participate. So not only do we draw people into the community from a business standpoint, but we also draw people into the community to come and experience this. And it's such a good time, and they always have good events for the kids. And it's a sweet afternoon, and hopefully, being that it's in September, it's never too hot, and it's nice to see that space utilized by so many people.
Yeah, for sure. And we did have Hal in from the Downtown Rutland Partnership. And we talked a little bit about some of the Friday Night Lives that we've had. I think we had 3 this summer.
It was 2 this year.
It was 2.
And then you have the Saturday thing.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
And so hopefully that is also, and I saw Facebook pictures, and it sure looked like there were a lot of people there. We fixed, I don't want to say fixed, but we've renovated the Main Street Park. And so that is... the site of weekly concerts. And for those that were in attendance all summer long, that was another great thing that Rutland celebrates.
It was nice to see people back. 7 to Sunset concerts on Wednesdays, and then the city band on Sundays. It's great to see that being used again. I know it slowed down after COVID, and then you had the whole issue with the gazebo. But now that the park is back to a usable state, I'm glad to see that. And Art in the Park was packed. I was just going to
say, yeah, that was great, and that was perfect timing because I think it was all done by then. There was still maybe a little bit of yellow tape around certain areas, but it was done, and it looks great. It really does. So.
It does. We got a little work left to do. I think the ceiling and then some of the pillars, and I think we'll be finished with the project. So that's great.
I want to mention the paving that was done over the summer. I happen to be on Stratton Road from where you used to live and where I live, to go from there to other parts of the city. And they did a great job with that. I think there's one coat left to do.
Yes, that's right.
Either that or we got a bunch of manholes that'll be sticking up.
No, we got more to go.
And then they did a piece of the sidewalk too. And it takes a lot of coordination. I mean, the best thing if you're in the paving business is to have everything shut down and go to town on whatever it is you're going to do and then open it back up. But they did the one-way kind of thing for a while, and I thought they did a great job. DPW was out there, and hats off to them. One of the other things, Bob Protovansky's invited the legislators to go on a tour of the water treatment plant.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to do that. That's coming up in September, too. So I'll let other people know in the delegation about that. And I haven't been there, so I don't know.
I'll tell you, DPW has had their hands full. Actually, summer is probably the busiest season at City Hall. Well, most people are taking vacations and out of school. Summer is always the busiest time for all of our departments, and they've really crushed it this year. We think about our roads like you were talking about, and there's a lot of strategic planning that goes into what we're doing when. Certain roads, we get calls all the time. Oh, how come you haven't done my road yet? And most of the time, it's because we need to do the plumbing under the road. And until we dig up the road to do the plumbing. So we're working on prioritizing that. If we're not going to do the plumbing under the road for 15 years, we'll come and pave the road. We'll be smart about it. And we've done that in a couple of places, and I'm really pleased with the work that's gone in from the department on that. The water treatment plant, we have... I know we have our issues with disinfection byproducts. We take our water from the Mendon Brook, and we have some of the cleanest, freshest water in the state, and we're really proud of that. And getting to take a tour of that once a year, we open it up to the general public for a tour too. So that's always nice. So if people get a chance to go see that, that'd be good.
We've got about 6 minutes left, and we're talking with Rutland City Mayor Mike Doenges. Anything new on the rec department director?
So not right now. We're still doing the search committee. Lots of conversations trying to get that finalized. But what I do want to say is, one of the concerns was because of the change that this summer would be a little bit rough. And I'll tell you, it was probably rough on the employees, but absolutely crushed it. We had the pool open, we were full service, we had swim lessons, we had camps. Everything operated the way it was supposed to, and the gratitude for that goes fully to the staff at the Rutland Rec Department. They did an absolutely amazing job. I had people step up to take leadership positions. I had new people being managers at the pool. They've done phenomenal jobs. I'm very proud of the work that was put in. I mean, even down to the events that we've held over the summer, flawless efforts from the staff. So, big gratitude from me. In the meantime, yes, we have the search committee still working on finding a new superintendent, and hopefully we'll have that buttoned up soon.
I did attend National Night Out, and that was another rec department event, along with the Rutland City Police and Fire Departments, and flawless, well-attended. What really always amazes me is go by the next day and you expect like Woodstock, to see all the garbage and the stuff, and it's all picked up.
You would never know it was there.
No.
And it's you called it out, right? The rec department is the foundation for the event, and they do such a great job getting everything set up and broken down and running it. And then you have the police and the fire that pitch in their own ways. So it is a perfect example of departments in the city working together for an event like that. I couldn't be happier with how that turned out.
What else can we talk about in the last 5 minutes here?
Well, I think, if we think about everything that we've been trying to do over the past few years in Rutland, to see such success in the housing like we talked about earlier, we should probably spend a few minutes talking about businesses too.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of growth in downtown, but throughout the whole city. We've seen new businesses pop up. We see some open and then close, right? And as people try things out and see whether it works or not, or family circumstances. But what I'm excited about, Brian, is continued investment in businesses throughout Rutland. So, for example, Olympic Pizzas, they bought a new building. They've gotten a grant from the city, and a few other places they've got some investment, and they are building a new location. And that's a perfect example of something that's happening in the city. We've seen new businesses open up in downtown, whether it's a new salon opening their doors or whether it's a coffee shop expanding. We continue to see this investment in the community. And I think the reason that that's valuable to talk about is, there's plenty of places people can invest their money. There's plenty of things people can do with their time. But people are saying, hey, Rutland is a place I want to be, I want to invest in, I want to grow in, and I think I can make it work here. And when we see that happen and we see it work so well, it's exciting. And you look at things like the building that is on the corner of Center and Wales, and they were just out there repainting the facade, right? That type of small improvement is still an investment. It's not just a landlord or a property owner saying, hey, we're going to let the building deteriorate because we want to take our value out of it, which is what a lot of these companies do. We're seeing our property owners in those spaces really caring. And I'm just grateful for the investment in the community on the business and property owner side and seeing that growth. Treviso just opened downtown at where Table 24 used to be. So there's another good example. And I think I've got beat on a couple of other places that are looking to open up. So I think you'll see Rutland's business and residential growth continue. And I think that's true testament to how smoothly things can run here, even while maybe economic turmoil exists outside of the city too.
One of the largest area businesses, of course, Casella's. And I want to mention, because it was announced earlier last week that John will be retiring.
Yes, that's right.
As the I guess CEO.
Yeah.
He's still going to be on the board of directors, and I think he's probably going to be the chair, which is, I think, a great idea. It's funny because we were up in the Pittsford area. They had a little bit of a Association of General Contractors party, if you will, and I spoke with Doug Casella that day, and there was a move made, I think, on the part of, because, they're now a
publicly traded company.
Yeah, and so all of a sudden, there's people on that wanted them to move the headquarters out of Rutland, Vermont, somewhere else. I can't tell you exactly what Doug told me because it's probably not G-rated, but basically, he and John both said, no way, no how, and they never did. And so it really tickles me that there's a locally based company that's worldwide and that does so much for the community. If I was starting off in life, I think I'd probably want to work for somebody like John Casella and Doug.
Absolutely.
They give millions and millions of dollars back to the community, a lot of the time very anonymously and quietly, but they're amazing people. They really are. So, John, I hope you enjoy your retirement. I know better than to say you're just going to probably hang it up and go play golf every day or get on a boat or something. He'll be still working.
He'll be working. Well, and you talk about that investment in the community as something simple, but it has a bigger cost than you think, is the trash cans in our downtown. John and Sue's foundation donated those, and they are awesome, because what used to be kind of a pain in the rear was these overflowing trash cans. Yep. We now have these beautiful smart trash cans. They even tell Casella when they're full so they can come and pick them up. Simple things like that go unnoticed are where the high value sits. So we appreciate having such an amazing company in our community, and I'm so glad that they want to stay. And I know they actually plan to, maybe even grow here more than they are today. So I look forward to seeing what that looks like.
Yeah. And John the Third is also, it's the second or it's the third, I think.
Yeah.
I think. Maybe it is the second.
Yeah, I don't know which one you're talking
about. Maybe there's another one. Young John, I always call it. He'll, again, I'm sure, be with the company for a long time. And it's such a great example of not just Rutland, but America. These are the two brothers that started a company with one truck.
Yeah. And
look where they've gotten. And
the whole family's involved. Right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a construction business or the waste management business. And I love that.
And they give back so often, so wonderfully, that I just hope John enjoys his retirement. And if anybody sees him, they ought to give him a hug and a pat on the back, because he really has done an amazing job. And there you go. Okay, so Mike Doenges, Rutland City Mayor, thank you for joining us today. We will definitely have you back on soon. And it's been fun.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
We'll see all of you next Sunday here on Catamount Community Connection.